Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our May 28th Media Advisory following the Emergency Advisory Committee meeting of Council. You'll hear in a moment from the Mayor, followed by Interim City Manager Adam Laughlin, and then we'll be happy to take questions. I want to once again thank Diane DeAndrade and Kevin Culp for their interpretive services, which are invaluable to us. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Katrin. Council's once again agreed to renew the local state of emergency here in Edmonton for another week. As we all know, we are still in the grip of a public health emergency. And while we have seen some great and compliant behavior modeled by Edmontonians, compliance is not the 100% we would like it to be. We heard Adam discuss the issues, particularly with basketball courts and with skate parks, where folks are not all doing their part to practice safe physical distancing. As long as we do not have access to a vaccine, Edmontonians remain at risk. Our local state of emergency provides city administration with the flexibility that they will need to take action on our community's behalf if we suddenly see increasing infection rates without having to call a council meeting to seek permission. We have heard that the province is considering lifting their public health emergency around mid-June, and if Alberta's COVID-19 infection rates remain low, then potentially moving to further phases of reopen. Now, this too doesn't automatically mean we would lift our state of local emergency in Edmonton. In fact, each municipality will need to look at their own compliance rates and their own particular challenges and their own infection rates to determine what they need to do to keep their residents safe. That being said, I do look forward to the day when we can lift our state of local emergency and start working within a new normal that we will find ourselves in at that time. In the meantime, we will continue to need to work together to be diligent and continue to follow all of the advice from public health officials. Now, just picking up a little bit on yesterday, as we do look forward to the future during these unprecedented and unpredictable times, I view the city's role as helping residents and our businesses navigate the complexities this pandemic has presented us all with, and to help Edmontonians overcome the hardships that we are facing. And this is why, again, I'm very pleased that Council passed administration's recommendations yesterday to provide business owners hard hit by COVID with much needed support by providing grants to business as well as access to our local economy team who've been working hard to provide one-on-one support to businesses to help provide answers to some of their pressing questions, as well as engaging with industry groups to help us understand what's working well for them and what is not, as well as the reduction in business license renewal fees that was previously announced yesterday. But I don't want to sugarcoat this point. Our economic recovery will be gradual. We're facing serious economic stability here in our region and out there in the world. But I will continue to advocate for programs and services like this one, as well as financial relief from other orders of government, so that Edmontonians who are already facing financial difficulties themselves can be confident that the municipal services that they depend on and that are necessary for a full economic recovery are properly funded without significant tax increases to pay for them. So I'll leave it there, go to Adam for some specific and technical comments, then we're happy to answer your questions.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here today. It's been 14 days since stage one reopening of Edmonton's economy began. By all accounts, Edmontonians have done a tremendous job in keeping themselves and others safe from the spread of virus. People are venturing into the community more and reacquainting themselves with spaces and places they enjoy. They are learning how to build physical distancing and regular hand washing and sanitizing into their daily activities. They are limiting gatherings with people outside their family cohort. The commitment to these practices have saved lives. It has kept the infection rates in Edmonton low and trending in the right direction. And then in the next few days, we will learn from the province if it means that Edmonton's zone is ready to move into stage two and have fewer restrictions. Today at the Emergency Advisory Committee, I shared some of the city's relaunch decisions that will add more economic and social vibrancy into the community. These decisions are the result of thorough assessments of what is safe, necessary, sustainable, and affordable. Public health guidelines are the rules that drive our decisions and how we implement them. Bringing back vitality to Edmonton safely and permanently is a responsibility we all share. This is work we are proud to lead, but we depend on all levels of government, businesses, stakeholders, and Edmontonians to each do their part. Our work also includes making difficult choices about continued closure, delay, or modification of services. We are disappointed when we are unable to serve Edmontonians with programs and services that they count on. In these unprecedented times, nothing is automatic or guaranteed. But for every careful, intentional decision we make, we are still open and responsive to the possible need for adjustment. In the past week, the city has taken important steps to develop and implement relaunch plans aligned with the provincial Stage 1 opening. In the past week, 37 businesses in the downtown, Old Strathcona, 124th Street, and Stony Plain business improvement areas have registered to expand their outdoor footprint. This is a collaborative effort between the businesses, the BIAs, and the city. And this will allow best fit solutions to be developed in each of those areas. 2 new shared street locations will go live tomorrow, 119th Avenue from the 106th Street Service Road to 101st Street, and 101st Street from 118th Avenue to 124th Street, or 24th Avenue, sorry. That brings the total to 21 residential roadways that have been adapted to support physical distancing for walkers, runners, and other active people. The reopening of sports courts, outdoor fitness parks, playgrounds, and other outdoor amenities this past week was met with a lot of interest and activity. For the most part, Edmontonians have respected the requirements to remain 2 meters apart, to wash and sanitize their hands before and after visiting the amenity, to not share equipment beyond their family cohort, and to limit public gatherings to fewer than 50 people. We thank them for protecting their safety and the safety of others. Unfortunately, ongoing non-compliance at some skate parks and basketball courts has caused us to introduce new restrictions. 2 basketball court hotspots in Blue Quill and Florence Hollick, and 2 skate park hotspots in McKernan and Castle Downs will be closed this coming weekend, effective May 30th. We want to send a message to users that compliance with the public health requirements is mandatory. It's not a suggestion. Enforcement officials will be patrolling all outdoor amenities to ensure that the rules are being followed. If Edmontonians want details on which amenities are open and what activities are permitted, they should visit edmonton.ca for current information. We also updated Council on transit fares, and starting June 15th, ETS will resume fare collection on bus, LRT, and DAT services. We will also resume front door boarding. From June 15th to 30th, customers can use either their March, April, or July transit pass or cash, tickets, valid transfers, and day passes for payment. In July, April or July transit passes will be accepted. We are currently working to ensure sales outlets have their July passes available by mid-June. Till further notice, transit service will continue on the current schedule. That means enhanced Saturday schedules for weekdays and regular Saturday service for the weekends. Adjusted LRT service and supplemental service for AHS employees offered through DATS will continue. We appreciate the important role camps play for children and their parents. However, we believe that the demand will be low, and frankly, given the difficulties of social distancing for children, we cannot anticipate a way that we can make camps financially viable, as financially viable as they have been in the past. So for these reasons, we are recommending that no summer camps will be offered in 2020. We appreciate this is disappointing for many. However, our reduced budget requires that some services remain suspended in the short term. In terms of e-scooters, we're going to be reissuing licenses to 2 e-scooter vendors, provided we can come to agreement on contract terms. We've received guidance from Alberta Health Services and are discussing implementation details with the company's representatives. To ensure the continued flexibility in managing the public health requirements during the reopening, the state of local emergency, as the Mayor mentioned, will be in place for an additional week. The city is pleased to be able to reactivate our economy and community. This week was a clear reminder that we depend on each other to do so. We'll continue to do our part to ensure our relaunch is safe and thoughtful. Again, I'd like to thank Edmontonians for their resilience and ongoing support as we navigate COVID together. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. We have 4 reporters online, and I'll go first, please, to Vinesh. Go ahead, please, Vinesh.
Yes, sorry about the delay there. So, Adam, let's first talk about the skate parks and the parks in general. So, you know, there might be mixed messages out there. People are hearing one thing from one side and, you know, from the city on the other. You know, how does the city kind of, you know, move forward in terms of, you know, ensuring its messages out there? And, you know, is the city going to become a bit more strict in terms of, you know, perhaps issuing tickets if things become a bit more challenging?
So we continue to try to make the messaging quite plain and clear for folks related to the different uses within an amenity area or a business area. We've created supplemental guidelines on our website to ensure that folks can knit together these different guidelines that have been created. So we continue to do that, and through our efforts in monitoring these sites, our peace officers continue to educate folks that they see at these sites to ensure that they understand the public health requirements and the expectations that we have as a city in terms of the provincial guidelines. So we continue to do that. And it'll be an ongoing effort. Every time we open up another facility or we get into the next stage of relaunch, it'll be an ongoing effort to make sure that we're communicating as clear as we can. In terms of the fining, I think we have issued some fines related to not adhering to the public health requirements. And in the case of the sports courts and the skate parks, we will be taking steps, and this weekend's closure is an example of that, where if we see a repeated behavior of non-compliance, we will either fine or we will close.
Vinesh, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes. Could I just, you know, just move over to transit? So, you know, the system, this is kind of a twofold question here, or a multifold question, I guess. The system's losing $10 million a month. Are there any projections on the reintroduction of fares? What will that mean? And then with that, any thoughts about, you know, having a requirement for passengers to wear face masks? And then also with that, I apologize, any concerns about the reintroduction of fares and the ongoing safety issues that, you know, some potential passengers might react negatively to that, and that could create a bit of a situation on transit?
So the 3 questions, the first one, do we have an estimate in terms of what we would see from a revenue perspective? Apologies, we don't have that yet, Vinesh. That's something we'll have over the next week here. In terms of I believe the next one was around masks, and we would strongly encourage folks to wear masks, and that question came up at EAC today, that our perspective is we strongly encourage folks when they're out in public to wear masks, and that includes on transit. And then the third one related to reopening it and you know, front door boarding and the safety components related to that. It's an ongoing effort to make sure that we're creating a safe environment to the best of our ability, but it's twofold, that we need that from Edmontonians as well to ensure that they're doing their part to ensure public health and safety is of top mind when they use the transit system. The efforts that we have around non-destination riders are still in effect, and we still are implementing that and ensuring that those individuals get to their required destination.
Thanks, Vinesh. We'll go next to Natasha with the CBC. Go ahead, please.
Hi. Specific question about how do you close skate parks? You know, playgrounds, there was tape around the equipment. The skate parks themselves, I've heard that there might be some fencing around the one at McKernan, and that over the past few days it might have been moved, even though I don't know what exactly what this, but so how do you close skate parks?
So where we do have fencing, like you mentioned, Natasha, we would utilize that. Where we don't, we would actually be bringing out the tape again to create a physical delineation that this facility is closed, and then it would subsequently be monitored by our peace officers to ensure that folks are respecting that.
Follow-up.
Okay,
Natasha?
so there would be, just to clarify though, there would be tape put around the skate parks?
That's correct.
Or fencing, or, okay. Okay, I want to switch a little bit to enforcement of physical distancing in general, and I just want to be really, really crystal clear on the difference between the peace officer's role and police, because if you've noticed, if you've been out and looking in restaurants, there are some tables where friends are gathering and sitting beside each other, and you know that they're not from the same household. So these rules are still being broken. I'm just wondering, peace officer, police, who does what here?
So based on the public health order, peace officers and police are empowered to enforce those orders on the province's behalf. It can also be enforced by public health officials. So all three of those categories are able to enforce the public health orders in public. So if they do see physical distancing that isn't 2 meters and it's not of your family or your cohort, which can be challenging sometimes and does require discussion with those individuals, they can enforce that. And if they do see gatherings of greater than 50 people, they can enforce that as well.
Thanks, Natasha.
So, sorry, can I
Yes.
just ask a, sorry, because I just want to know how empowered do peace officers feel about doing this? Because I'm seeing this all over the place, and I'm wondering how much direction they're getting to enforce these rules, Adam.
So the approach that we have is to educate, issue warnings, and if we continue to see non-compliance, then we issue fines or we take the next step, which is closure. So our peace officers are aware of that. They do use those parameters in each of the situations they experience, and they have issued a number of warnings and they have issued fines as well.
Thanks, Natasha. We'll go next to Jeff with Post Media. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it was just mentioned regarding the skate parks and the basketball courts about, not ruling out more closures if things don't improve. I was just wondering, how are you going to sort of measure that on whether more closures are necessary?
So we'll monitor each of the parks on a daily basis, and the rationale for the parks that I mentioned closing on the weekend is based on the data we had. That's where we saw the greatest degree of non-compliance. So we're going to use daily records of attendance or how many folks are there, and if there are compliance issues. And if we're seeing, and it came up in the questioning today at the Emergency Advisory Committee meeting, if we do see with one closure a move to another facility and similar non-compliance issues, that would be another indicator for us that we may need to go further with additional closures. So if I could, it's a bit of a soapbox here, but we've permitted opening certain facilities on the basis of good guidelines provided by the province, which again are our rules. We interpret them as our rules. And the expectation is that individuals follow them. If they do not, in this pandemic, we will close facilities. So it's on Edmontonians to make sure that they're following these guidelines and specifically the public health requirements.
Jeff, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I was also curious if if we're seeing people not following the rules at skate parks and basketball courts, would you consider closing everything down then? Say, like if you're not following the rules at skate parks, hey, baseball's closed, soccer's closed. Is that how it would be? Is that the approach you would take?
Sorry, is your question, if we're seeing it in one, would we close all?
Yeah.
I think if we see in a particular category of amenity, so if we continue to see, for example, basketball court issues, we may take the approach that we close all basketball courts. If we continue to see ongoing skate park issues, we may take the approach to close all skate parks. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if we don't see it in another amenity, that we would close that amenity. So it's going to be on the basis of the use of that particular amenity.
Thanks, Jeff. And we'll go lastly to Sarah with Global. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, guys. Today we saw the lane closure start on White Avenue. It was met right away with some criticism. I'm looking for your response to that. People saying they don't feel it's needed, they don't feel it's necessary, there wasn't adequate signage, people didn't know if it was for construction or for social distancing. Your reaction?
I'm not aware of that criticism. In terms of the shared street closures that we've implemented, we've communicated in advance, and a number of them have helped in particular areas and been received very well. So if there's a particular location that has received criticism, I'm not aware of that at that point. But as we have done throughout this pandemic, where we see concerns or issues, we educate and react accordingly.
Do you have a follow-up question, Sarah?
Yeah, we spoke to a landlord in the area. He said that he didn't feel like he was consulted on that. Is that something that you guys did? Did you speak to business owners along White Avenue before it was decided that would be one of the shared spaces?
My understanding is that there is engagement that happens with the business improvement areas and businesses and property owners as we consider different treatments on the roadways or specific closures. If there is a particular concern within an area, we will work to address that with either the business improvement area or the particular landowner.
Thanks, Sarah. Are there any final questions before we wrap up?
May I have one more about e-scooters?
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, Adam, how is this enhanced cleaning of e-scooters going to work?
That's a detail that we're actually working out with the vendors. They've come with suggested approaches. We've shared that approach with Alberta Health Services, and still a detail that we're working through with the vendors. And that's part of when I referred to signing agreements with them, it would include those provisions or expectations. So, and I don't know the specifics. It could be as simple as having staff that they have to come out and clean, or it's a responsibility of the user to ensure that they sanitize. We talked about corralling the scooters in a location, which may make sanitizing easy for those vendors. So there's probably a number of different methods that they would use.
And those details, Natasha, are being worked through with the vendors right now. Are there any final questions before we go? I hear none. Thank you for being with us. We'll speak with you again soon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Adam.
Thank you.